When one thinks of monotheism, the religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam tend to come to mind, and although they are all Abrahamic religions, they sprout their core differences mainly from the singular teaching of a prophet. For Judaism, Moshe Rabbeinu was the main figure that defined Jews as both religion and as a people. Christianity's fundamental difference of being a sect of Judaism is the importance of Jesus as a Messiah and a Redeemer. And for Islam, the Prophet brought the truth back to a corrupted world. Similarly then, the teacher of another, older monotheistic belief follows the same trend, Zarathustra of Zoroastrianism. The preaching and teachings of this man form the basis of the Zoroastrian faith that has endured throughout Persia, Bactria, and India since ancient times. Zoroaster, or as he is called in the native Old Persian, Zarathustra, is a figure wrapped in both fact and legend in the Zoroastrian faith. The obscurity of his exact life leaves us lost on exactly when he was around, as he served more as an ideal follower of the faith in the Avesta, the core collections of religious texts akin to the Talmud in Judaism or the Christian Bible. That said, we can still use these texts to gather a rough understanding of his life and the root of his teachings. Zoroaster lived some time in the 13th century BCE, although some scholars push this back to the 2nd millennium or as early as the 8th century. He was born somewhere around Bactria, near modern-day Afghanistan, to a farmer family of 5 children, to which he was the middle. Here, he grew up being trained as a priest in the local ritualistic beliefs, although he ended up rejecting these beliefs, and upon adulthood, he moved away from home and wandered around Bactria looking for meaning. And meaning he would find when one day he would spot a gleaming being, an agent of Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom. Here, he had a revelation about monotheism, as Ahura Mazda as the one true God, and of the duality of the universe. The world to him was divided into good and bad, Asha, truth, and Druj, lie. Ahura Mazda was on the side of good and truth, while Agramenu was on the side of bad and lies. Of these two concepts, there were 6 divine aspects of them, the AMESHA SPENTAS, or beneficent immortals: good purpose, right-mindedness, righteous power, devotion, integrity, and immortality. These thoughts preach of free will and the choice to act good or bad in every action, and to strive towards attaining these attributes. Zoroaster wrote down his theology in the GATHAS, a collection of hymns that form the backbone of the Zoroastrian worship. From this, he would find himself supported under the patronage of King Vishtapa, where Zoroastrianism would spread in the area of Bactria, although it would be centuries later under the Achaemenids where Zoroastrianism would first reach real prominence. To cut a long story short, in 550 BCE, Cyrus II of Persia revolted against his Median overlord, and in a string of conquests over the next couple decades, he conquered almost the entirety of the Middle East. His son, Cambyses II, then conquered the Egyptians. But when he died, a new dynasty took the throne, the Achaemenids. The new dynasty were residents from the Persian homeland and firm believers in Zoroaster. Darius the Great brought Zoroastrianism to new importance as the official religion of the Persian court. Here, we see the significance of Zoroastrianism as a basis of a divine right to rule. From inscriptions dating back to Darius' reign, his successes are attributed to Ahura Mazda, and his kingship is granted by Ahura Mazda. Ahura Mazda is the one that bestows him with the right to rule over many other kings as Shah and Shah, the king of kings. He was merely the representative of Ahura Mazda to rule over the world, and if Ahura Mazda is the god of truth, Asha, then his enemies are agents of Druj, lies. The legitimacy of the Achaemenid monarchs then did not come from any secular acknowledgement, but rather the righteous blessing of Ahura Mazda. This was their mandate. It offered the justification to their decrees and the ability to rule with unlimited scope. However, this divine right should not give the impression that Zoroastrianism was necessarily the dominant faith of the empire, nor that the ruling class were fully devout worshippers. The land stretching from the Indus to the plains of Thrace housed many varied polytheistic faiths and practices. The faith of the ruling class could not so easily reject all these people. Hence, we see an evolution of the Zoroastrian faith to accommodate for these local polytheistic faiths. The 6 AMESHA SPENTAS that we discussed earlier were very much abstract concepts on the side of truth, although they would come to evolve into a more literal form as divine aspects of Ahura Mazda himself. Each of these beneficent immortals became associated with real elements: good purpose with cattle, right-mindedness with fire, righteous power with metals, devotion with earth, integrity with water, and immortality with nature. This helped to better integrate these ritualistic polytheistic faiths and people into a more polycentral monotheistic version of Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrian influence in these rituals also extended to other faiths residing inside the Achaemenid borders that were not polytheistic. The Jews. Having been exiled by the Babylonians from their homeland in Israel in the 6th century, the Jews had come to reside in Babylon under captivity. Although, come Cyrus the Great and the destruction of the Babylonian Empire, the Jews were allowed to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple. However, this was not an instant migration, and Jews were found from Egypt to Persepolis, and many still remained in Babylon. To see Zoroastrian influence in Judaism, we need only to look at contemporary texts of the time, such as the Book of Isaiah. The first half of the book details the looming end of the Jewish kingdom in order to bring about a new golden age. But the second half details how the oppressors have been defeated and that this new golden age is upon them. However, these two events are separated by more than a century. To reconcile this, it would seem that the first half was written by the contemporary prophet Isaiah in the 8th century, and the second half by another source sometime around the time of Cyrus the Great. The text is also similar in prose to that of the GATHAS. Further Zoroastrian impact on the Jewish faith extends to the other books, particularly the Book of Esther, which details the story of how the Jews survived an edict of their destruction by the Persians through the work of Esther, the king's consort. The main villain of the story, Haman, who manipulates the king in issuing the edict, shares a similar etymological name to that of Ahriman, the Zoroastrian spirit of destruction. Ahriman would also rear around the 4th century when Alexander the Great and the Macedonians would conquer the Achaemenid Empire and rule over the Middle East for the next couple centuries. Yet, the Zoroastrian faith would continue to survive in these times of occupation and play an important role in shaping an identity to the Iranian people, for there were no liberty under both the Parthians and Sasanians, successor empires of the Persians. Both would use divine right under Ahura Mazda as their justification to rule as King of Kings, just like Darius. However, the Sasanians would take it to a much more devout significance. The Avesta often makes reference to an Aryan people, not in the way you're thinking. The Aryan people were a part of the Indo-Iranians, a rough collection from Persia to the Indus. The Avesta describes how Ahura Mazda is the religion of the Aryans, united in language and culture with a sense of particular Aryan glory. In the Old Persian language of the Avesta, the word Aryan was most closely pronounced as Iran, but would be the Sassanids who would convert the Zoroastrian ideal into an Iranian identity. The imperial title of the Sassanids evolved from the Achaemenid title into Shah and Shah Iran, the King of Kings of the Iranians. This sense of national identity would unite the Iranians as a uniquely Zoroastrian people, which would become vital in the 7th century CE when the Islamic conquests would bring an end to the Zoroastrian Sassanid Empire, replaced with the Islamic Caliphate. Zoroastrians were persecuted as second-class citizens by the Muslims, and it saw the steady decline of the religion since then in Persia and India. Yet, even through successive conquerors of the region, such as the Abbasid Caliphate, the Seljuk Turks, Mongols and Tamerlane, the Iranian identity would continue on, even if it was not Zoroastrian, with the rise of the Safavids in the 16th century. Modern-day Zoroastrianism has taken on a different form than its ancient counterparts, with most of their followers living as a minority in modern-day Iran and India. Current figures place them at about 190,000 Zoroastrians worldwide, diminished due to migration, forced conversion and persecution. But the undeniable impact of Zoroastrianism in shaping the ancient cultures of the Middle East, the impression on neighboring religions such as Judaism, and the fostering of an Iranian identity cannot be forgotten.